Eric Shesky's Weekly You Demon. This Catholic dude abides. Culture, society, drinking, philosophy, religion, even politics. He's never out of his element. So sit back with a sarsaparilla and enjoy.
Guess I gotta kind of lower my voice this next segment. You'll understand why in a minute. Let's talk with my nephew about a new subdivision he's moving into, and talks about the various, rules and regulations of the homeowners association. And I said, if your subdivision outlaws leaf blowers, I'm in. I'm packing up and I'm moving out there. Unfortunately, it does not prohibit leaf blowers, so I'm not going to. And that kind of got us off on a discussion. And I said, just in general, I said, I just hate excess noise, especially the suburban ones, the lawnmower, the leaf blower, the freaking power edger for your lawn, the snow blower. Now, the snow blower doesn't bother me a whole lot because, typically it's the freaking winter and I'm inside anyway with the door shut. But, a few things are worse. And you go out on your front porch, you can have a gin and tonic or a cold beer, gonna read a book or maybe listen to some background music, and then the dude next door is mowing his lawn. Or the guy 2 houses down is leaf blowing with that loud wheezing blower. It goes on for 1, 2, 3 hours, just doesn't stop. And have you ever noticed that when you're outside and the dude next door or 2 doors down, whatever, in the neighborhood is using a power tool of some sort, when he stops, have you ever noticed the tension lifting in yourself? Or rather, the tension falling off? At least with me, it happens all the time. I'm almost used to it. And then as soon as it stops, whew. I didn't realize how much that was stressing me out. And I guess I just don't get it. I mean, we're almost like an exercise obsessive culture. I had a young person I work with, big burly guy. He'd probably pick me up and break me over his knee. And he told me a week or two ago, he goes, as I was out raking leaves, he goes, I was actually pretty sore afterwards. And this guy, again, this guy plays, he's a good athlete, he's a Division I athlete. And, he can handle it. And he's like, boy, raking kind of wore me out. It's like, yeah. I mean, shoveling your own snow with the shovel, raking leaves, pushing a lawnmower, actually using a manual edger. You ever use one of those things? I mean, they suck, but it's a good workout though. If you just don't use mechanical tools, you can get a lot of exercise. You don't need to go get a gym membership. But we just live in this culture where it's obsessed with leaf blowers. You stand like a freaking statue, slowly going back and forth. And it's I think it's awful. And think about it. It's kind of outrageous. It's like that dog example I gave you. It's like everyone's found these dogs walking up and committing, which by a human would be an assault. But we're okay with the doggy woggy's doing it. And I don't know why, but clearly the law is pretty clear that dogs can molest you as long as they don't bite you. And I think it's an outrage, but I'm not going to win that battle. This is another thing. Why is it that, if I am, blasting bright lights into my neighbor's, house at night, or even during the daylight, a cop will come and tell me knock it off. The sense of sight is being violated. Why don't we do it with noise? And yes, I realize there are some noise ordinances out there that prohibit, certain high decibel things. But why not with all these mechanical, these mechanical toys that, cumulatively create far more quote-unquote noise pollution. I don't really like that term. I'm not sure why, but create more noise pollution than say someone playing, music in the backyard, at a reasonable level. Why are we okay with it? I really don't know. And, I put out, in this discussion, look, I'm in my garden. I said, hey, I grow over 500 pounds of greens. I'm talking like lettuce that doesn't weigh hardly anything. 500 plus pounds of greens every year. And now I don't make any noise at all. I'm not bothering my neighbor. Then my sister-in-law used to live next door. She goes, oh yeah, what about that one time we couldn't sit out on the back porch because you had that smelly compost? And I was like, well, that's a great example, actually. Because actually I think it was 2 days. They couldn't sit outside because I had gotten this, leaf grass moldy mixture and spread it all over the place, and it was awful. Had flies, and I really screwed up. But it was gone in 2 days, and it sucked. And that's over the course of 10 years. One time had an overpowering smell. But the point is, a great point to make, because that was bogue of me. Why was it bogue of me? Because the smell I created on my property was wafting over onto my neighbor's properties. That's not cool. You shouldn't do that. But why is that any different than the noise? You know, if you gotta mow your lawn, you got power edge, you got a leaf blow, use something that I can't hear. Why is it okay for the noise to waft over onto my property, but not okay for the smell to waft over? I mean, I think if I was spreading compost like that, like every week, that should be enjoined. You know, or at least I should be shunned by the community because I don't like getting government involved. Or maybe there should be a fist fight. I don't care. But if I'm constantly gassing my neighbors out with the crap I'm putting in my backyard because my garden, that's totally unacceptable. And I think it's totally unacceptable to be constantly invading your neighbor with the noise from your power tools. I really don't understand why they're treated differently, other than convenience and common mores. If it were me, if I were king, I'd say, look you can't use any power tools before 9 o'clock in the morning or after 5 o'clock in the evening, Monday through Friday. And on the weekends, you can't use them at all. Or maybe if I had a homeowners division, I said, look, we can all use them, you know, from 10 to 1 on Saturday. Other than that, you gotta do it while people are at work. That's what I would do. Kind of bogue. And for me, I mean, I'd get one of those. I actually looked into it. I'd get one of those manual lawnmowers. Yeah, sharpen the blades every year. Terribly inefficient. But they're cheap. Looking to get one for like $100 because I have a pretty small yard because most of my yard's all dug up for the garden. And again, I realize I'm not going to win this battle when it comes to banning yard tools. You know, mechanical yard tools. I'm not talking about, you know, hand shovels and stuff like that. I'm talking about the gasoline powered or electric powered ones that are really loud. But you think about it, there are lots of things in the culture that we outlaw or otherwise ban that are far less offensive to the passerby or the neighbor than power tools. I mean, smoking within 20 feet of a building. Big frickin' deal. I couldn't care less if some dude standing out in the street 10 feet from my house having a cigarette. Couldn't care less. I don't care if my windows are open. And I hate cigarette smoke, by the way. But, geez, it's not that big of a deal. How about throwing a beer can out the window? That'll land with a $500 fine. You might even go to jail for that. But a beer can out the window that goes in the ditch, that doesn't really affect me. I don't have to look at it. I can turn my head. Even if there's 30 of them out there, I can just kind of turn my head. Again, I'm not for litter. Never been one to litter myself. And I think it's a pig who throws trash out the window. But by themselves, you know, a couple cans here and there, it's just not that big of a deal. But yet we have harsh bans on that. How about public intoxication? You know, I get stinking drunk and I'm weaving down the road, kind of singing to myself. Cop comes by. I might end up in the pokey. Why? I'm not offending anyone. I'm not hurting anyone. But yeah, public intoxication, people shouldn't have to look at that, so we ban it. I guess what it comes down to is I am like a philosopher named Max Picard. I am an ardent hater of noise. That's how Russell Kirk described Max Picard, an ardent hater of noise. Russell Kirk was a hater of noise as well. He called the automobile the mechanical Jacobin. You know, Jacobins are the extreme left party of the French Revolution. They're the radicals and loved killing people. Russell Kirk described one time that he was in Toledo, Spain. And I'm guessing this was probably late 40s, 1950s. And he was at that point Toledo, which was always a sleepy town, like just like a bastion of silence, like almost out of obedience to St. Teresa Avila. And she wasn't from Toledo, but I think Avila's just outside Toledo. But he was describing it. He was in like a little restaurant cafe there. Nice afternoon. He goes, these two guys come in, kind of talking loud, ask the bartender or, you know, the clerk is, hey, do you have a radio? And they get the radio and they turn on this flamenco music at full bore. And this one of those little transistor things, really, those tinny noises. I can just imagine it. You know, they're thumping along to the music, talking real loud. Kirk's getting annoyed, and he realizes that these guys are like the heads of the League for Silence. It's a league that promotes silence in Spain. Spain's always been like a slumbering nation of silence. And they're talking about how, yeah, we need more silence in this land. While they're polluting the air around them with their noise. You saw Kirk writing about it years later was just disgusted. But Max Picard, just a little tangent there. The guy fascinates me. He was, he wrote these little books, thick little books, I call them, like Hitler in Ourselves, I believe was one of his. The World of Silence is excellent, the parts that I've read. The Flight from God. He was Jewish, became Catholic, and then went back to Judaism on his deathbed, if I understand correctly. But strikes me just a fascinating guy. He basically lived poor. An admirer of his works gave him later on in life, I don't know, maybe in his 40s or 50s, gave him like a chateau in northern Italy to stay in. I don't know if he actually deeded the property to him or just said, hey, this is yours as long as you live. And so he was like holed up in northern Italy in this nice little house where this admirer said, just go there. Your work is so great, go there and create more works. I mean, that's like my dream come true, although I guess I'd have to have a chateau big enough for 7 kids and a bunch of grandkids. It reminds me of one of my favorite books of all time. It makes me weep. Is George Gissing's The Private Papers of Henry Rycroft. If you're a closet nerd, you gotta read that book. It's short. But this guy, basically, he inherited from me. He was like a journalist, but kind of like a quasi-closet scholar, kind of like I am. I'm not really a scholar, but I pretend to be. He inherited from an uncle or something a small annuity. And it allowed him to retire very, very simply. But he got a certain amount of money every month from his dead uncle's annuity. And it allowed him to take his savings to like in his late 50s or whatever, early 60s. He took his savings, bought a little house out in the country, took all his books, went in there, and he was just content as could be. All he did was just read and write all day, walked around the house. I think he had a small garden, just a real enchanted life. And then he basically finally just dying of tuberculosis or cancer or something like that. It was just, it was a beautiful little story. But this guy basically finally, I'm getting towards the end of my life and I finally have, I'm going to have 10, 20, 30 years of just peace. And then he dies. Anyway, I kind of envision Max Picard, but without the, without dying young. I don't know that much more about him. But he wrote this book called The World of Silence. Again, I recommend it. I had myself not read the entire thing, but it's a beautiful little book. Also, but if you want another book about silence, this one about halfway through is Cardinal Seurat's The Power of Silence. This I've heard many people describe as a modern classic, and I think it probably is. Seurat is like Sarah, Sarah. And I'm really enjoying it. Yeah, it was actually assigned a reading to me by a priest who went to confession, and he basically read Seurat's The Power of Silence. And it's not a thick book, but I think it's like 300 pages. Like, oh my gosh, here, it's just one goat. Just kidding. For non-Catholics out there, a typical penance would be like, say 5 Hail Marys, say the Our Father, pray for a friend, for this guy who's having some troubles, whatever. Usually they're pretty simple penances. If you've done something pretty bad, the priest might whack you with a whole rosary. But here, I was told to read an entire book. The priest did say, ask if it's okay. But I really recommend it because I'm not going to make you read an entire book. And I said, no, actually, I've been meaning to buy it. So if that's my penance, but I said, I want some time to read. He said, take your time. It's one of those books you pray with. You don't plow right through it. But I'd say, that book, The Power of Silence combined with The Virgin Eye are just 2 excellent books if you want modern spiritual classics. If you want a shorter work about silence, go check out this awesome piece called The 8th Capital Sin. It's an article about, basically how the author goes through and describes how, you have the 7 capital sins, or 7 cardinal sins, whatever you want to call them. Anger, lust, sloth, etc., etc. But the reason they're capital sins is because they lead to other sins. People say, boy, how come lust is a capital sin, or sloth is a capital sin, or greed's a capital sin, but not murder? It's because those 7 capital sins are the dispositions of the soul that lead to the actual sin. So the 7 cardinal sins or capital sins, they're not even sins in and of themselves. They're rather sinful dispositions of the soul. And they lead then to sins. And this author goes through and points out that I think there should be an 8th capital sin, and it's noise. Noise is the 8th capital sin, because, noisiness inside of you leads to noisiness outside of you. It leads you to want to start exerting yourself, and this makes you basically a general pain in the ass. And so you really ought to cultivate internal silence, which quite frankly is Max Picard's The World of Silence and Seurat's The Power of Silence. You ought to cultivate internal silence, because that'll then result in peace and then external good actions. But yeah, you can check out the 8th capital noise. The writer's name is Eric Chesky. I published it in a piece called The New Pantagruel, which is an online magazine that folded up after a couple of years. I'll probably discuss that in a segment here shortly. But if you can't find it, by the way, I do have it at the Daily Demon. When I realized the New Pantagruel had folded, I think I cut and pasted into my blog. I'm not sure, but maybe you'll find it. It's kind of interesting. Well, maybe not. I guess I wrote it, so I shouldn't say it's interesting. But in that article, I point out that I said the 8th capital sin, though, is a little bit different. I said it's the one capital sin that can be jammed down your throat. So consider the sin of gluttony. Consider if people could force it on you, they could jam meat down your throat and ice cream, and they could make you eat and making you into a glutton. I said noise is kind of like that. Because you can't, if it's pervasive and it's coming over, like from your freaking neighbor's, leaf blower, you can't block it out. So that's like the one capital sin that can be foisted on you. So, it's making it especially insidious. Alright, let's do some lightning segments. I have to call this lightning segment the blowback segment. Got a little bit of blowback for some things over the past couple weeks. Nothing bad, just some comments and some concerns. First off, my own blowback. At the Masters, when the National Organization for Women, the NOW, launched their protests and like 40 or 50 women showed up, I was trying to say hundreds or thousands of men showed up in a counter-protest. It wasn't hundreds of thousands. I didn't enunciate very clearly, but it's hundreds or thousands. I don't remember how many, but it dwarfed the female presence. That was the funny part. Someone says something like, I thought that was interesting, the idea that the reason people feel so hectic and pressed for time is because we're so wealthy. There's so many cool things we can do, but I'm not sure I really buy it. And that's cool. That's fine. What I'd like you to do, though, is do a reductio ad absurdum. You reduce it to the absurd, take it to an extreme. And that, by the way, is a time-tested and revered philosophical principle, a philosophical practice. Just take something, take it to its absurd conclusion, and see if it's not true. So, here, envision yourself in America, and you have nothing but the bare necessities. Not like no one does, really. Just you have nothing but the bare necessities, so you can't go to your neighbor who has more than that and they'll entertain you. No, you only have the bare necessities, and you only have access to the bare necessities. No car, not even a bicycle. You have a roof over your head, you have clothes, you have enough food, but that's it. You ain't golfing, you ain't bowling. You might, like poor people throughout history, have a little garden going. I mean, that's a peasant time-honored activity, that's for sure. But only if the produce outstrips your costs. The output outstrips the input. Otherwise, you won't be able to afford to do it because you have no extra money. And let's face it, you live in that world. I mean, Sunday come a-calling sounds pretty good. Going out and visiting your neighbor and sitting back and chatting sounds pretty good at that point. And all sorts of other things that we don't like anymore. Going to lunch and service club meetings, stuff like that. That stuff will start sounding pretty sweet. And I also wonder if it's why young guys don't get laid anymore. And again, as a serious Catholic, I'm against all non-marital sex. But, I mean, let's say, basically, being a young man, if you're not Catholic or devout Christian, trying to get laid's, part of the pursuit of being the young man. But we find out now it's not. That's when, like in Japan, I guess, like very few guys want to get laid anymore. We're finding more and more young men in their teens, early 20s, aren't pursuing sex with women because it takes too much freaking time. They would rather watch and play watch other people play video games, or play video games and then bang a robot, or maybe dream about banging a robot. I'm not sure at what level of virtual reality sex we're at in this culture at this point. But I think part of this, the whole thing of we're such a wealthy country is kind of leading to guys not wanting to have sex with women. That's awful. Kind of makes me wishing I was 18 and a heathen. I'd probably be out banging everything I could. It's like, you guys want to go play Xbox? Great, leave more for me. Game of Thrones blowback. This really wasn't blowback. Someone was just joking about my references to pornography. But it reminded me of this movie critic named John Simon. I thought he died, but he's going to Wikipedia. He's still around, but he was a conservative movie critic, and I always read his movie reviews back in the 1980s. He wrote for National Review. I actually ordered a book of his movie reviews. It should come from Amazon any day now. Yeah, and I know I said I wasn't going to order any more books, but when I thought about John Simon and how much I loved his movie reviews and saw that there was an anthology of them, I had to buy it. But he one time referred to an actress's breasts as rotten vegetables. And she complained, understandably, bitterly and said he was out of line. And his response was, if you don't want me to review them, then don't bear them. You see this new Hangover Cure that's catching on like in New York and Las Vegas? These are doctors who have like portable labs, or you can go to their shop and they'll hook you up with an IV to rehydrate you and pump Pepsid and stuff into your body. So for like $200 or $300, you get rid of the after effects of a hangover. I actually have a friend who said he's at a bachelor party, and one of the guys standing up was a doctor, and he actually brought IV bags and rehydrated people, and he said it worked phenomenally. And I gotta tell you, to me that's just not cool. That's like taking the pain out of playing. And I think a hangover is one of those things you want in place to check excess. Because, drinking to excess is a sin. It can be quite a serious sin. And yes, I appreciate it's one of the sins that still dogs me occasionally, but it is what it is. And you start eliminating the hangover, now you're encouraging excess drinking. I just don't think that's a good thing. That being said, I can tell you, on at least probably 50 occasions since I was a young man, I would have paid $250 to get rid of a hangover, because I was just incapacitated for hours. So yeah, I condemn the practice, but I get it. And if I have a bad hangover, I'd be really, really hypocritical, because I'd be signing up in a heartbeat. I heard about a thing this evening called jail wine, and this lawyer telling me about it is surprised I'd never heard of it before. Inmates, like they hold back fruit from their suppers or keep rinds, and they put them like in I don't know if they put them in bedpans or what they put in it, but some sort of container, maybe mix in some breadcrumbs or crust they save, and they let it ferment, and they drink that. That's just nasty. I guess it's pretty big, like in jails or whatever, living in a commune. Yeah, I always thought the worst part of living in a jail was, other people see me take a dump, but having to drink jail wine, that might take the cake. Hey, that online magazine, the New Panther Girl, that was the brainchild of a guy named Caleb Stegall. I don't know how to pronounce that. Stegall. And he and one other guy, I think, they're out of Kansas. I think they came out of that John Senior Humanities program at the University of Kansas. I can't swear to that. But in an earlier podcast, I mentioned John Senior and how he started this program at the University of Kansas that was basically humanities, Western humanities program. And it got in some hot water because kids are taking this program and they begin to convert to Catholicism. And even worse, a lot of them start becoming nuns and priests. This guy was such a compelling individual in his own life, in his manner of presentation in the classroom, in his one-on-one studies and tutoring of children, that they basically started realizing, hey, Western civilization is the Catholic Church, and we want to be part of that. And so they started joining, and got in some hot water. And I think Caleb came out of that milieu, although I'm not sure about that. But the very last episode, the very last issue of the new Pantagruel. By the way, Pantagruel, I believe, was a character from the writer Rabelais, who was one of Albert J. Nock's favorite writers. This kind of, you've heard me in the earlier podcast talk about one of my heroes, Albert J. Nock, the father of American libertarianism. And he's a big Rabelais fan. That was one of his characters. And the last issue, Caleb goes through and says, hey, look, when it all comes down to it, what we believe in is staying home, taking care of your family, living a quiet life, a tranquil life, a pleasant life, and trying to, launch a magazine, putting yourself out there, your opinions, maybe doing a podcast. Those things are really just kind of inconsistent with that. So with that, I guess we've argued ourselves out of existence, and they shut down the magazine. Now, I think what's happening, though, Caleb was making progress in a different sinful area. Politics. He is now sitting on the Kansas Supreme Court. And last week, when the Kansas Supreme Court said abortion is a constitutional right, and it was a unanimous decision, except one dissenting justice, and that was Caleb Stegall. Caleb wrote a very lengthy dissent. I have not read it yet, and I don't think I'm going to, but I downloaded the opinion. The overall opinion is like 70 pages. I think Caleb's dissent's like 10 pages of it. But anyway, yeah, he's, good for him. He's appointed by Sam Brownback, and he's fiercely conservative, and the only person who opposed that horrible decision out of Kansas. Okay, that's a wrap for the week. Go check out the Facebook page, subscribe to the Twitter feed, tell your friends and family. Go to UDemon Podcast for show notes and other information. As always, thanks for listening.